Hey guys, welcome to 9.9 Comics, the top 5. I'm your host Kyle, and today we are going to bring you the top 5 picks for the week of September 18th, 2019. Here you go, guys. Coming in at number 5, we have You Are Obsolete, number 1 out of Aftershock Comics. A disgraced journalist is called to cover a mysterious story on an isolated European island. As she investigates, she discovers the children have taken control and are somehow killing off all the adults by their 40th birthdays. Now, she must discover the truth behind the killings while staying on the good side of the children's harsh leader, or she's next. You Are Obsolete is a spine-tingling thriller that evokes the eerie naturalism of 1970s horror films with a modern, deadly digital twist. Written by Matthew Klickstein from Sony Pictures' Against the Dark, Slimed, Springfield Confidential, and Selling Nostalgia, and drawn by Evgeny Bornakov. I'm not good with names. From Descendant. And we picked this as our number 5 pick today, mainly because, I mean, it's a new number 1 out of Aftershock, and Aftershock has never really let us down whenever we sniff our nose in the direction of his new releases. And honestly, it's a decent premise. It kind of reminds me of Lord of the Flies a little bit, which was a highly successful book. I mean, if you've ever been to school and forced to read a book, that's usually one of them that make you read. Coming to number 4 this week, we have Rick and Morty vs. D&D Volume 2 Painscape number 1 out of Oni Press. You thought you could escape? Think again. Rick and Morty Forever, a new miniseries issue of D&D with Rick and Morty, dual classing Rick and Morty to level 50, milking owlbears with Once upon a game, Rick, Morty, and the Smith family went on a magical D&D adventures. Now, magical D&D adventures are coming to Earth, and no one will survive the Painscape. Painscape. The world's greatest role-playing game returns to plague the world's most dysfunctional animated family, and this time. We can't just rest on brand name recognition and curiosity to fool your interest, Morty, because no one gives a damn about sequels unless they're really good, so no pressure. And, you know, fan favorite, dice-dependent Jib Zub from Samurai Jack and Savage Sword of Conan, 2 great runs, reteams up with Eisner-nominated cartoonist Troy Little from Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas and the Powerpuff Girls. Those are polarizing titles. To destroy Adult Swim's pop culture juggernaut and the best-selling role-playing game that once used the term Thaco? Okay. I'm not a big Rick and Morty fan, so. But the reason why we're picking this one is, I mean, it's pretty obvious. Rick and Morty is pretty much the most collectible comic based on a TV show that's out right now. The number 1 CGC at like a 9.8 is worth a lot of money, so it's worth picking up pretty much any Rick and Morty key issue. And not only that, but after the success of Volume 1, you can pretty much expect Volume 2 to follow suit. The Rick and Morty vs. D&D was a huge success when Volume 1 was released. And, I mean, pretty much simply, Rick and Morty is just hugely popular overall, so it's especially for this time point, so it's an easy pick. Coming in at number 3, we have Forever Maps number 1 out of Scout Comics. The newest entry in the new Binge imprint, where Scout releases a world premiere issue followed by the entire story a few months later in 1 volume. In 1794, those are different years, a young man named John is given a map. Curious, he follows it, and when he arrives at the end, he finds a similar map. This leads him to another, and then another, and on and on. Determined to find something, anything else, he continues to follow these strange maps all over the country. Decades later, he learns that as long as he follows them, he doesn't seem to get older. And it's not until nearly a century later that he realizes when he stops, time begins to catch up with him. Torn between family and immortality, John must continually choose between living forever and having a life worth living. So just from that, you can tell it's going to be a pretty good comic, because that storyline sounds really good. And not only that, but it's got a nice Rip Van Winkle feel to it. I don't know if you guys ever read that in school, but it's when the guy falls asleep during the Revolutionary War and wakes up, and he wakes up like 20 years later and nothing's like as it seems. Anyway, but This is a brand new Scout comic, and pretty much every Scout comic that gets released goes out of print and gets hugely popular, and that's why they're always on the top 5. And not only that, but this is going to be a binge series, so that means you're only going to have one single issue comic that comes out of this, and you want to get that comic because this is going to be the only thing you pretty much can collect, because everyone knows trade paperbacks really aren't that collectible at all. Coming in at number 2, we have Once and Future number 2 of 6 out of Boom Studios. The Maguire family has held back supernatural threats for generations, but this time they messed up. As an ancient evil arises from the grave, Bridget and Duncan find themselves up against forces bigger than they could have ever expected, and faces new and old are about to complicate things further. So this is pretty much a big deal, because, I mean, number 1 is in its 6th printing. So that lets you know that no matter how many times they release the same number 1 comic, it just gets gobbled up. So with that said, you can expect people to be clamoring for this 2nd issue. But I don't know if you guys heard me when I said it the first time we talked about Once and Future, but this is from the same writer of Die, that's right, the highly popular D&D based comic that we talked about a few months ago, and it's not out of print now, but expect it to be out of print by its release. And this is going to be a big one, you guys. You do not want to sleep on this one at all. And now it's time for the 9.9 no-brainer. Today's 9.9 no-brainer is Spider-Man number 1, and this is a big one, you guys. Who is Cadaverous? The most shocking and incredible comic of 2019 is here as J.J. Abrams out of Star Wars, Star Trek, and Super 8 and his son Henry Abrams are joined by superstar artist Sarah Pacelli from Miles Morales and Guardians of the Galaxy. Team up for Spider-Man. What do they have planned for Peter Parker and Mary Jane Watson? Who is Cadaverous? The modern master of mystery makes his marvel this September. So this is going to be a big deal for many reasons, obviously, because it is the 9.9 no-brainer. For one, as I've already stated, we've got J.J. Abrams at the helm. Also, we're getting introduced to a brand new villain. This is going to be his first appearance, you guys, so this is going to be a key issue. Also, I want you guys to pay special attention for that Chip Kid die cut variant, which I'll have up here on the screen in a second or right now. And so you might want to get those before everyone else does. And this is going to only be a 5-issue run, so it's going to be really easy to collect, and on top of it being a 9.9 no-brainer, I mean, that's a pretty big deal. Now, moving into those honorable mentions, we're going to start off today with Marvel with the release of Absolute Carnage number 3, Absolute Carnage The Protectors number 2, Black Panther and Agents of Wakanda number 1, Guardians of the Galaxy number 9, House of X number 5, Savage Sword of Conan number 9, and Arrow number 3. Moving into DC Comics, we have Flash Forward number 1, Inferior 5 number 1, Lex Luthor Year of the Villain number 1, and finishing it off with Supergirl number 34, specifically for the Derek Chew cardstock variant. Moving into Image Comics, we have Weatherman Volume 2 number 4, Excellence number 5, and then finishing it off with Scout Comics with the release of Show's End number 2. Speaking of the Show's End, this is this Show's End, and I would like to thank you for liking, subscribing, and commenting. Remember to click the little bell on the bottom there just so you get an alert when our shows go live, and come back next week for another Top 5.